we begin, I'm going to just start us off with a prayer, if I may. So if we're all ready. Father God, we thank you for the vastness of the sky. The brilliance of the stars are constant reminders of your majesty. And when we look up at it or see the expansive horizons, we're in awe of your greatness. Your wisdom's evident in every part of creation, from the tiniest insect to the grandest mountain range. And we're amazed by the diversity and the intricacy of the world you've provided us with. Thank you for giving us a creation with balance and harmony. Help us to appreciate and protect the ecosystems and creatures that we share this planet with. Let our respect for nature be a reflection of our respect for your incredible wisdom. Amen. And now it just remains for me to hand over to our lovely guest speakers. Full disclosure, as well as working at Green Christian, I do a couple of days a week with Wildcard, but I've got my Green Christian hat on tonight. And these are my colleagues, Claire and Poppy from Wildcard, to talk to us about rewilding. Claire and Poppy, if you'd like to unmute yourselves, I'm looking forward to hearing from you.
Thank you for that introduction, and it's nice to be joining you all this evening to talk a bit about something that both Poppy and I care a lot about, and I think a lot of you will be very interested in as well, rewilding, and how we can be using rewilding as one of the most promising solutions we have to kind of responding to the biodiversity and climate crisis we're facing. So yes, I'm Poppy, and there's I'm Claire, and we've got Poppy here as well, pinned to the screen. And today we're going to run through with you. I just realized, David, this is a good time to share the slides. But today we'll be running through with you a bit of the story of Wildcard, some kind of brief information about rewilding and what that actually means as a kind of solution to the biodiversity and climate crisis, and then run through two of our key campaigns that we're working on at the moment. So the first of those being the Rewild the Church campaign that myself and Kat work on, and then the second being Rewild the Ghostwoods, which Poppy is playing a big role in. So yeah, I'll hand over to Poppy to give us an intro to the story of Wildcard. So that's just the slide that you're on at the moment.
Lovely. Yeah, hello all. So we are part of Wildcard. There are 9 of us in total. So yeah, we're quite a small organisation. But we have been around 4 or 5 years now. And our mission, I guess, is to challenge the UK's largest landowners to rewild their land. So as Claire has said, we're currently working on 2 campaigns, but we started with Rewild the Royals, which was aimed at getting the royal family to rewild some of their vast estate. I've forgotten which of these land holdings is the biggest, but of the royal family, the Crown Estate, and Forestry England, which are the 3 major landowners that our campaign has focused on. We've got pretty good coverage of who we've targeted. So yeah, our aim is to bring people together, connected with a shared passion and care for each other and all the non-human kin we share these lands with. So we're a grassroots movement trying to build people power around rewilding. Could you go to the next slide, please? So yeah, I won't spend too long on this because I'm sure all of you here are aware of the state of the planet at the moment, and especially the UK. So since the 1970s, wildlife populations have declined by 41% in the UK and almost 70% across the world. The UK is one of the least forested places in Europe, with just 13% forest cover, compared to an average of 38% across the EU. Only half of the UK's forest is native woodland, which is really vital for lots of different really amazing, beautiful species. Most of our woodland is unfortunately non-native conifer plantations, which are essentially tree farms. 1 in 4 British mammals and 31% of reptiles and amphibians are threatened with extinction. And 90% of UK wetland habitats have been lost in the last 100 years. So yeah, I think it's probably obvious to everyone that something has gone wrong, and we're not currently looking after nature in the way that we should be. Yeah, here's just one example on the slide as well of Wisman's Wood in Devon, which is a tiny, tiny fragment of temperate rainforest, and that's massively threatened by grazing. I visited and there were multiple sheep loose, which just causes complete havoc with the really, really special and delicate temperate rainforest habitat. Next slide, please. Yeah, the good news is that rewilding is a really effective and brilliant tool for countering this decline. So rewilding is not about just letting land go and not worrying about it. It's about focusing on the recovery of natural processes. So rather than just trying to conserve nature for a particular species, which quite a lot of conservation does, it's about trying to get the processes in action that support the whole web of life. It's about working with nature and letting nature lead, seeing what nature wants to do with the space. And it can lead to a whole like diverse range of ecosystems. It's not like you rewild and all of that, it always looks the same. You know, if you rewild a moorland, it's going to look very different to a rewilded lowland or river. So yeah, it's about restoring what was lost and protecting what remains rather than just conserving what's already very, very damaged. So especially if you think about shifting baseline syndrome and the fact that often people see the nature that they grew up with as the baseline. It's instead, rather than just conserving what we have now and seeing that as like normal, it's trying to restore what was lost. And maybe that might mean a different ecosystem comes out at the end of it. It's not about trying to find a date that we go back to, but it's allowing nature to take control once again. Next slide, please. Lovely. Yeah, so there's lots of different tools that we use to do rewilding. It should be said that Claire and I are not hands-on rewilders. We are rewilding campaigners. But obviously through that we've developed a decent understanding of it. But if you have in-depth questions about rewilding, we're probably not the best people. But yeah, often it is about reintroducing species. So you've got the longhorn cattle in the bottom right that are really brilliant for creating disturbance, as well as the ponies for breaking up when you've got like monoculture grass, in order for other species to get hold, breaking up that soil, which is often very compacted as well. Same with pigs, helping to disperse seeds, create room for different species of plants to come in. Beavers are my favourite animal to talk about with this, but I'll talk about it more in the next slide, because beavers are just absolutely incredible for river rewilding in particular. So yeah, it's about using nature's toolkit, and it's also about it doesn't always have to be about species reintroduction. So often it is about using people power, using grassroots power to mimic these roles that might have been played by different animals in the past. So hedge laying and coppicing are a really like traditional craft in the UK, and we definitely see that as part of a restored habitat of rather than just putting up fences, you know, using those old methods. And also things like if you can't reintroduce beavers, you're just using leaky dams or creating different types of disturbances. Yeah, could I have the next slide, please? Yeah, back to beavers. I think beavers are amazing. But specifically on the climate side rather than just the nature side, although they do amazing things for nature as well. They are brilliant for restoring wetlands, so turning it from a river that's just been channelized and disconnected from the floodplain, but reconnecting it to floodplain, reducing flooding, reducing droughts, massive adaptation and mitigation from beaver wetlands that I wrote a whole essay on, so I will stop. Restoring peat as well is a massive problem in the UK, is that peatlands are massively degraded in the UK, and when they are degraded and they dry out, they release massive amounts of carbon into the atmosphere, methane into the atmosphere. So we really need to, yeah, it could be a massive carbon bomb, is what peatlands are often referred to as, including on church land. So trying to restore peatland back to the wetted state it should be in would not only be brilliant for a whole range of species, but also would have major greenhouse gas impacts, massively reduce the carbon emissions from land, especially in the UK when we have so many peatlands. I can't remember exactly what percentage of peatlands we have, but it's much higher than you might think. Yeah. I think I'm handing it back to Claire now.
Yeah, so I guess in recognition of all these impacts and benefits that rewilding brings, so intentionally dedicating land towards restoring natural processes, the UN's Global Biodiversity Framework set the global target that 30% of land and sea should be protected for nature by 2030, importantly as a minimum of what's needed to reverse biodiversity decline. And this work was informed by hundreds of scientists and experts. And at its heart, it's about ensuring that there's the space and conditions to allow nature to thrive, as well as recognizing that rewilding and nature restoration can deliver multiple benefits, as Poppy mentioned, to help us address climate change. So the UK government is a signatory to that framework, alongside over 190 other nation states across the world. And they've also set our own national target of 30 by 30. So given, the dismal state of nature in the UK, rewilding is going to be an essential part of solving that crisis. And in order to meet that target, it needs to happen at scale. So yeah, if we want to reject business as usual and actually commit to supporting large-scale coordinated action, then we will have a chance of preventing the extinction of millions of species and safeguarding our planet for future generations. So the importance of having a target like this to work towards as a minimum cannot be understated. We'll go on to the next slide. On a more kind of personal level, cultural and spiritual level, our relationship with land and how we treat it is both the reason we find ourselves in these crises, and it also determines our capacity to address them. So currently the dominant culture's approach to land is one of extraction and exclusion. And so in order to address that underlying issue, we have to address our relationship with land and nature. And so, yeah, if we were to follow the lead of, indigenous cultures across the world, land can be our greatest defense against the crises that we're facing. And collaborating with the land rather than seeing ourselves as having dominion over the land, and supporting the land to restore its own natural processes is what's going to allow us to have landscapes that are more resilient to flood and flower, and wildlife to have homes to return to, and also for us to feel more connected to the places that we call home as well. Next slide, please, David. So the problem is that most of us in this country don't actually have access to land to take action at the scale that is necessary. And that is because land in the UK historically has been concentrated into the hands of a few people and institutions who have disproportionate influence over the health of our land as a whole. So there's this statistic there that by conservative estimates, only 2.83% of land in England is currently protected for nature as per the UN's definition for 30 by 30. And so reaching the UN and government target of 30% land protected for nature will require the large landowners in this country to step up and commit to rewilding. Which brings us to the next slide, where our campaigns have been born out of, including the Rewild the Church campaign. And this campaign specifically calls on the church commissioners to play a leading role in solving the biodiversity crisis in the UK by committing to rewild 30% of their massive landholdings. On the next slide, I have some more information about that. So the Church Commissioners is one of the largest institutional landowners in the UK. It is the investment body for the Church of England and owns over 100,000 acres of rural land as part of its £11.1 billion asset portfolio. And this rural land portfolio includes forestry plantations and farmland that is leased to tenants. With these significant resources, the commissioners have a responsibility to contribute towards our nationwide efforts to restore nature at scale, and at the scale that's needed to match the crises that we face to meet the 30 by 30 target. The commissioners have been encouraging its tenants to adopt nature-friendly farming practices, and they've protected some small patches of land, but still that only amounts to about 3,600 acres of land that's currently managed primarily for nature, which is only 3.5% of its total rural portfolio. So there's so much opportunity to build on the progress that's been made, and aim higher given the size of the portfolio. And other large landowners that are comparable to the church commissioners, such as the Crown Estate and the National Trust, have set more ambitious nature restoration targets in contribution towards our nationwide target of 30 by 30. But as of yet, the church commissioners themselves haven't set a target or made a plan for how it will use its portfolio to contribute towards that national target. On to the next slide, please. So earlier this year, Reverend Canon Valerie Plum submitted a motion to the Church of England's General Synod, which requests that the Church Commissioners act in line with the scale of the climate and biodiversity crisis by committing to protect 30% of its land for nature by 2030, or the nearest practical date. In just a few months, that motion was signed by over 100 General Synod members, which means it now has a good chance of being debated at the next General Synod meeting in July, which is, this is really major, I guess, for the campaign. So this motion represents a historic opportunity for the church to lead by example and show other large landowners what is possible, as well as inspiring congregations across the world. On to the next slide for how you can play your part in this Rewild the Church campaign. So right now, I guess the most important thing we can be doing is to get behind the motion presented by Reverend Valerie Plum by reaching out to General Synod members in your diocese to bring their awareness to the motion and encourage them to vote in support of the motion if it comes to debate in July. So we've got a community action pack, which I actually will link to after I finish talking so I don't get too distracted. But in that community action pack, we have a whole bunch of resources to help you contact General Synod members in your diocese to share your views and ask for them to support the motion on 30 by 30. And also resources for you to take to speak and present workshops within your local communities to share more about rewilding and the Rewild the Church campaign, even if you're not in a specifically, I guess, Church of England context. The other thing you could do to get involved is come along to the events in either Norwich on the 16th of June, Oxford on the 20th of June, or London on the 17th of June, where the Climate Choir will be leading us in song to deliver our movement's message of hope to General Synod members. And Climate Choir has been involved in the campaign before, and they're very joyful and joyful actions, and it's a good chance to connect with other people that are really passionate about this as well. So I'll share those links to RSVP to those events in the chat after this as well. That's all from me. I'll hand over to Poppy to talk about Rewild the Ghostwoods.
Lovely, thank you. Yeah, so our other campaign that is currently running is Rewild the Ghostwoods. So as I said earlier, around the UK there are hundreds of thousands of acres that used to be ancient woodland. So ancient woodland in the UK is defined as anything that has been continuously wooded since 1600. Definitions are slightly different in Scotland and Wales. So this land should be ancient woodland, should be native ancient woodland, should be teeming with life, and instead, unfortunately, is tree farms. So if you could go to the next slide, please. So yeah, here you have a bit of the differences between true ancient woodland and what we call the ghostwoods. So as this is a real wood in Oxfordshire, that is ancient woodland. And on the right, you have a woodland that is native. You can see the amount of different species. We've added some images of species just to draw people's attention to it. But yeah, there's a whole variety of life there. Whereas on the left, you can see those conifer plantations. They're very sterile, they're very dead. I think lots of people will have been in them and thought they were quite creepy. I definitely do, which is why we've called them the Ghostwoods. But the good news is about these timber plantations is that they remember that they were once ancient woodlands. So the soil still has the incredible microbial relationships and the seeds from the ancient woodland species, which means that actually if you take off the conifer plantation, that ancient woodland can come back, which is really, yeah, it's remarkable, incredible. And that's what the campaign has been focused on. So we've been specifically focused on Forestry England as the managers of the public forest estate. So they own 105,000 acres of these ghostwood sites. Yeah, if you could go to the next slide. Yeah, so we started the campaign by calling on Forestry England to bring back the ghostwoods, so bring back the ancient woodlands smothered beneath your timber plantations. So yeah, we started with an aim of looking at Forestry England as the managers, but actually we quickly realised that DEFRA and the government hold the purse strings on that, so they don't receive any funding for ancient woodland restoration until this year, but they won't tell us how much, so we're thinking probably not very much. They have a commitment to restore all of their ghostwoods back to true ancient woodland by 2044, but when you look at their actual progress year on year, it's pretty abysmal and it's getting worse. So we know there's no way they're going to hit that target. So this year, the government are going to release an England Trees Action Plan. And in that, they have £1 billion to spend on woods and trees. And currently, all of that £1 billion is going to be spent on planting new woodland. And whilst new woodlands are great, especially for locking up carbon, the biodiversity benefits you get from restoring ancient woodlands is just vastly bigger. And you get that diversity so much quicker because so many species are already living there dormant and ready to come back. So yeah, we've had 147,000 signatures with the help of the incredible Dame Judi Dench on our petition. Next slide, please. We hosted ghost hunts this was last summer, in 5 or 6 Forestry England ghostwoods around the UK, where we brought lots of local people together to explore their ghostwoods and yes, explore both the sides that were timber plantation and the sides that were true ancient woodland, because a lot of people don't realise what kind of, they just think I'm in a woodland, and they don't necessarily realise that, you know, they can go a couple of meters and they go from beautiful habitat rich, species rich ancient woodlands to conifer plantations. But I do find once it's been pointed out to people, yeah, it becomes something you can't really ignore. Yeah, next slide, please. At Wildcard, we're really big on including art in our actions as well. So we commissioned 15 artists to create short videos about the theme of Ghostwoods to try and reach a slightly different audience. And also we find that communicating with art and with emotions gets across a lot better than facts. Often facts and data don't really work for like inspiring people's emotions most of the time. So this is our launch event where we had artists present their work to a group of people, along with my incredible friend Ellie playing the cello. She wrote a song that actually then got picked up by the BBC for their Tune Into Nature prize. So yeah, had great, really, really lovely response to that. Next slide, please. Sorry, I'm going quickly. I'm aware we've run out of time. So yeah, most recently, this was 2 weeks ago, we delivered the petition to DEFRA itself. So we hosted a slug rising, is what we called it. We hosted the biggest ever gathering of people dressed as slugs, we believe, in Parliament Square, delivering the petition. And we've had really great success from it. We appeared on page 2 of the Telegraph and page 3 of the Sunday Times, which was brilliant to get that attention on the campaign. On the right is MP Andrew George, who came down to show his support. We also had DEFRA ministers, when we were outside DEFRA to hand in the petition, coming down to say they'd spent all morning in a meeting about the England Tree Action Plan, which is the exact plan that we have been trying to influence, and that they got distracted by our wonderful dancing outside, and were really supportive. So yeah, it's been brilliant so far, the success that we've seen. Next slide, please. So yeah, just finally, a couple of next steps if you would like to get involved. The next steps for us is we are running a letter campaign to the Minister for Nature, asking people to write to Mary Cray to show your support for including restoration for the Ghostwoods in the England Tree Action Plan. Yeah, so the England Tree Action Plan should be coming out in summer, they've said, but they have been very, very opaque about what actually that means. But we believe that, well, from being outside and someone coming to tell us, we know now that actually now is the time that they are discussing this plan. They're making their plans. So this is the best time to really push Mary Cray and the rest of DEFRA to commit to funding. And it would make a massive difference to Forestry England. You know, if they had dedicated funding year on year to do this, they would have to achieve their targets. Yeah, lovely. I'll pass back to Kat, I believe.
Thank you so much, guys. That was, well, I spend a lot of time with you guys when I'm not at Green Christian, so I knew some of it, but I also learnt a fair old bit myself. So, yeah, thank you. Inspiring stuff. We're going to break out. We're going to go into breakout rooms for 10 minutes in a few moments. And David, thank you for helping shepherd us into those in a minute. What I'd suggest, so not everybody here is Church of England. In fact, not everybody here is attached to a church. We all have our Christianity in different ways. So we thought we'd suggest, if we could, that people in your groups maybe discuss one of 3, and you can have all 3 being discussed in a group, 3 different ideas. If you're in a church, which is Church of England, or you have friends who are Church of England adjacent, what is it that you think you might be able to do to help with the success of the private members motion that will be happening in Synod this July? Do you know people who will be there and have a vote? Can you influence them? Are there ways in which your church can get involved with rewilding, whether or not you have much space yourselves. So what can you do about rewilding church land, either on the big scale that our campaign's involved with, or on a smaller scale within your own church lands? The second point you might like to discuss and think about is whether you can remember a point when you were in nature, wild nature, and felt a real connection with it that helped you connect to God or to nature itself on a real emotional and spiritual level. And has that stayed with you? How has that stayed with you? And third, one that's very close to my heart, if you have or know young people, how can you encourage them to engage with wild nature in a way that will stay with them and help them appreciate it and want to nurture it as they go forward? Because we need the next generation of Claire and Poppies. Looks like we're mostly here. Well, I was lucky. We had a really vibrant conversation there. So thank you to the group that I was with. You'll notice that the recording has started again. So welcome back to everybody. And I'm just wondering whether anybody in any of the groups would like to share with us. You can let us know that you'd like to do that either by, if you know how to use the digital hand, you can find it at the bottom of your screen. There's what's called reactions, and you can raise your hand, and a yellow hand will come up on your screen, and hopefully I'll spot you and ask you to put your questions to Claire. And or if you have questions for Claire on any other issues to do with the campaign, I think in our group somebody wanted a little bit more information around the Rewild the Church campaign. I'm going to be quiet now and look out for raised hands and the like. I'm not seeing, let me see. Not seeing any yet. Now then, who was it who wanted to understand a little bit more about the Church of England's Cordelia, fire away.
I wanted to ask about the plantations. Aren't they owned by someone, and weren't those woods planned for timber or something? They must have an economic value. And who owns them? I mean, maybe
Yeah.
it's different everywhere.
So the specific Ghostwoods campaign that Poppy has been leading, Cordelia, that specifically focus on plantations owned by Forestry England, which is a public body. So that land is public land, but it's managed by Forestry England. And you're right that those plantations are there for commercial value, but because it is public land, they should also be serving the public good. And when one of the most effective solutions we have to increasing biodiversity in woodlands in this country is restoring sites that still have the memory of ancient woodlands in the soil, then really we should be embracing that. And that is widely recognized in Forestry England's own reports, and the government's own research and targets reflect that. The only problem is that the funding doesn't then take that next step of giving the tools that are actually needed to allow Forestry England to meet the targets that the government has set. So that's why the campaign is primarily asking for ongoing funding to restore those ancient woodlands, because the commitments have been made, which is great, but there's just not the resources behind it to make it happen.
Okay. Judith, is that a pat on the back or a hand raised? You're muted.
Anyway, I'd like to speak. Oh, it's the same question as in our group. So I'm a Methodist, but we've got really good relations in Settle, so I know loads of Anglicans. So if I wanted to get in touch with my synod rep, I was asking how do I do that? Anyway, someone else just suggested ringing up the diocese office and asking, so I can do that. But it'd be nice to have some examples of how church land has been used for rewilding or just straight nature conservation, because I'm really keen to protect what little bits of nature left. Often it's really important to protect them because the ghost bit doesn't always work, or at least it gets destroyed a lot in the process.
Yeah, I guess across.
If we have some good examples, we can say, oh well, look, this church land, you've done something well done for that, but at the moment we don't know anything.
Yeah, well, there's quite a lot of examples of work that's happened at a parish level, which the ARUSH's website is a good place to find those examples.
Oh yeah, I'm involved with Churches Count on Nature. I'm doing massive stuff.
Yeah, awesome.
I encourage everybody here needs to go to their church and say, can I help you count your flowers and things for nature this week? Because it is this week. But that's churches. It's not the same as this church land.
Yeah, so in terms of that broader kind of the investment land, I guess you could call it, rather than just the parish land. There is, as I said, the church commissioners have been working with some of their tenant farmers to restore some of the land, but it's still only 3% of their total portfolio. And that 3% is really important, and that's kind of the positive example we can point towards. But it needs to happen at a much greater scale. But I'll also give a shout out to Jeff, who's here with us, who, as part of his local wildlife group, kind of took initiative and formed a relationship with the church commissioner tenant to restore land, some of, I guess, neglected bit of their farmland. So, Jeff, I don't know if you want to speak briefly to what
I'll just
you
outline
did
what we
there.
had. It's a 200-acre tenanted farm, of which about 40 acres was woodland. 3 woodlands making up the 40 acres. One is an ancient woodland of about 10, 12 acres, and 2 more minor woodlands, which are not ancient woodlands in themselves, but they are separate woodlands. The ancient woodland was full of rhododendron and full of balsam. So its biodiversity value was quite low. Also, because rhododendron poisons the ground, there was no understory. Rhododendron actually keeps the ground acidic, even when it's been removed for many decades after it is gone. So it is very damaging. Anyway, we've removed all the rhododendron, bar a few bits of regrowth. Today, we've been out bashing more of the balsam, removing the balsam. We've been on that for 3 years now. And what was carpet area balsam is now a much more diverse plant area. There's lots of fallen trees there, which are good deadwood habitats for everything. But we've had a change of tenant recently. So whereas we had a very good relationship with the previous tenant, this one we're not really allowed to meet, but we have got a communications route through the agent for the church commissioners. So we have agreed, or it has been agreed by the church commissioners, the agent and the tenant, not to put forever chemicals into the ground. This is a big win. We've also agreed that with the tenant and the agent that we can access the woodlands for the purpose of removing the invasive species which are in there, which I hasten to add, they're meant to remove, but that's by the by. So we are making some progress. As I say, these are 3 woodlands. We would like to join the woodlands together by having some of the farmland replanted to enable the 3 woodlands become 1 woodland. However, that's going to be another step.
Thank you.
That's amazing. I can see Mark's got a hand up.
Yes, thanks, Carla. I have to apologise to my group because I rather monopolised the conversation on land ownership, comparing what Andy Whiteman has to say about Scotland and Guy Subshoal has to say about who owns England. Andy, I think it includes England and Wales. I mean, he says it's 30% aristocracy, 8% corporations, 18% bankers, about 70% unregistered, and only 5% are homeowners. and the public sector's got less than 10%. The public sector, I assume, was the woodlands that you were talking about a minute ago, Claire. So basically, there's a relatively small number of people are controlling a vast amount of the land, as you showed in your presentation. And my point was really to think about how you would remove a lot of the ownership of that into a community land trust, where, okay, the farmers can still farm the land, but they are not then in sole decision-making role as to how they farm the land and how they use the land. That should be under democratic community control, back in the commons, if you want to use old-fashioned terminology. So that would need radical land reform. But if you did that, there would be enough reorganization of land use to provide food security, I think, and still allow at least 30% of the land to be rewilded, not just come under protection. And that would make a big contribution to the UK's efforts to combat the climate and ecological crisis that we are right in the midst of. Have your organization given any thought to those sort of radical changes that would need to take place?
Yeah, thanks, Mark. I couldn't have connected the dots better myself. So thank you for laying that all out, because that is the underlying issue here, is that because land, since the time of the enclosures has been continuously concentrated in the hands of a few, we've lost the capacity to have a say over the way land is managed, despite the fact that the way that land is used impacts all of us equally. And so, yeah, I guess those radical reforms would be wonderful to have to work towards in the future. But for these campaigns, we've kind of designed, if I can use that word, to address the crisis as using the current system, within the current system that we have now, which means that we do need to speak to and persuade the people that are managing our land and who holds the majority of that power and influence, in order for them to take action as soon as possible, because that land reform process is a longer term process of change, when we do need land to be protected and restored as soon as possible. So this is kind of an interim solution towards kind of hope, I guess, longer term land justice. And also, I guess, by targeting institutions like the Church Commissioners, the Crown Estate, and Forestry England, these are institutions that have a responsibility to answer to and be accountable for their actions to the public. So by making these demands of them to raise their ambitions, we are kind of, in a way, reclaiming our democratic right to have a say over the way land is managed in this country, even if that's not reflected in terms of handing land back over to the commons and equalising the system that we currently have. So this is using the power that we have right now in coming together and demanding more as a collective, to use the tools of democracy that we still have access to. But I really appreciate you making that link between the kind of land justice element to this as well.
Claire, I'm just thinking a couple of the things that you've touched on here, and also some of the questions that we heard in the breakout rooms relating to things like food security and so forth, are addressed in the report that the team prepared for the Church of England, talking about impacts on climate, impacts on finances, impacts on fiduciary duty, impacts on our ability to keep producing and indeed produce more of the food that we're going to need by repairing the soil that does that. You might have already put it in the link. I can't see because I haven't got chat up, but it would it would be great to make that available to people, I think.
Yeah, I'll send it out now.
David, would you be kind enough to save the chat? And then if there are useful links, if anybody would like, we can box those up and send them out to people who have been on the Zoom. In fact, I might do that anyway, just BCC everybody. Judith, I can see you're the last hand up, and I'm going to ask you to be the last one, if that's okay, everybody else, just because we're coming close to the close. Over to you, my dear. You're muted. There we go.
Just to say again, it's Churches Count on Nature Week starting this Sunday. So please, could there's everybody here, if you go to church, well, make a special effort maybe to visit your local Anglican church, because they're always keen to have them, and say, can we make a count of what you've got in your churchyard? I know it's too late to get heavily involved, but you could make, if you just made a list of 10 species and sent it in, that would be a start for getting your church involved, and it would show that you were interested and it wasn't just an academic thing.
Thanks, Judith. Really appreciate that. And I think now we're coming so close to the close that we won't take any more questions, if that's okay. But I really would like to thank Claire, and in her absence, Poppy, for taking the time to come and share these campaigns with us and give us ideas about not just why it matters, but what we can actually do. I really would recommend exploring Wildcard's website, because there is some really inspiring, entertaining and creative stuff on there as well. Some of it is absolutely beautiful. And as Claire says, if you are able to get to any of the climate choir actions, or if you have influence over anyone who's going to have a vote at Church of England General Synod, don't hold back, because this is a really big opportunity, and it's such an achievement to have actually got it on the got the potential to have a debate on this. So I'm going to now, if I may, lead us in a final prayer. I'll start actually though with a little reading from Job chapter 12, 7 to 10. Everyone knows Job got a proper kicking, but persisted in his faith, and so can we. Nature's having a kicking, and we have to stand up for her. Anyway, Job 12, 7 to 10. But ask the beasts, and they will teach you. The birds of the heavens, and they will tell you. Or the bushes of the earth, and they will teach you. And the fish of the sea will declare to you. Who amongst all these does not know that the hand of the Lord has done this? In his hand is the life of every living thing, and the breath of all mankind. And that's the end of that reading. And so my prayer, which I hope we'll share, is this. Heavenly Father, nature is our most profound teacher, revealing your handiwork and your wisdom. The animals, the birds, the plants, all of those microbes and fungi and amazing different species all point to your divine providence and the abundance that you gave us that we have failed to care for. So as we look at these intricate details of nature, many of which are just way beyond our understanding even now, help us to recognize your presence in all these things. Help us to learn from your creation and one another and people who come to share their wisdom with us, like the folks from Wildcard today. And be reminded of your care for every living being, not just humanity. Guide us to live in harmony with nature and to respect the life that you've given us. Amen, amen. Good people, thanks so much for being with us. We will let you know what the details of the next session are very soon. David, I want to thank you for keeping everything running smoothly. It's really very much appreciated. Thank you all for coming today. It's been lovely to see your faces, some new ones and some that I know very well. And Claire, I think you've earned the rest of the evening off.